Hello, everybody. So, I've got a very special episode for you today, and it's going to be discussing Will and his amazing performance just after the balanced data slate at the UKTC major called the Northampton Major. Now, welcome on board, Will. How are you doing? You good?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, man. Yeah, feeling good.
You should be feeling good after this performance. So, for those of you who don't know, Will has been part of the Puretide Program now for just coming up to 9 months, is it?
Yeah, sounds about right. I think so.
9 months, and you've gone fifth at this super major.
Yeah.
Fifth.
Yeah,
Let that
feels
just
good.
sink in, right? Tau, and you're getting fifth. And for those
Yeah.
people that don't know, the UKTC is an absolute shark fest. You know, you have names like Mani Cheema, Vic VJ, David Gaylord, Brian Sepp. The list is endless. So for you to pull off this performance, I myself am super proud, and I know you're absolutely buzzing. So,
Yeah.
mate, honestly, let's get it over and done with now. Congratulations. You should
Cheers.
feel absolutely on top of the world, mate. So, what we're going to do is we've got obviously lots of questions that we're going to be throwing Will's way from both the Pure Type Program community and obviously myself. But we're just going to get to know the man of the hour. So, Will, tell us your story then. So how long have you been playing Tau for?
So I've been fan of the hour. So I've been playing Tau and 40k since last November. So I guess a year and we're in February now. God, February's gone fast. A year and 4 months. But I started playing 40k and Tau. It's the only army I collect really. So yeah.
And why Tau then? So, you like me, you only play Tau. What drew you to
Yes.
this
Yeah.
army? This magical army?
Yeah. So uh, it was a very tactical choice. I basically went through every single 40k arc. Well, I guess for some context, when I started wanting to play, I wanted to play like more in the competitive side than I was into like the hobbying side. That's probably like, just worth saying. And I also knew that if I wanted to keep up with the meta, there was a certain level of like hobby lag and collecting and painting and so on. So that was in the back of my mind. I didn't want to have to paint millions and millions of models and so on. So but basically, I went through every army that I could collect, like literally, and I kind of like ticked them off for either like I can't stand them aesthetically, or they would be a nightmare to collect, or like really expensive, or so on. And I kind of like went through, and then ended up having like only a few, only a few left. It was quite methodical, and then it was between. So I was interested in Tyranids, but the biggest problem was I was terrified it would one day go Horde Tyranids, and I would never play Horde Tyranids ever. So I was like, the problem there is I would play the current meta Tyranid list now, but I would not. I would never play Horde. So that got rid of that. I was interested in Eldar, but I hated the fact that all the aspect warriors, all these like bright, shiny colors. I just disagree with it. And then I also had this like theory that I would, if from a hobbying perspective, like if Howling Banshees were good and I had to get 30, and then Striking Scorpions were good and I had to get, it would be a pain. And so I ended up falling with Tau, where I was like, okay, tons of their units can be like changed interchangeably really nicely. So like Skyrays to Hammerheads, Crisis Battle Suits, you can just change all the guns and magnetize them really easily. Same for Riptide, so it kind of felt pretty good. I've always loved the Fire Warrior Breacher model. I just think they're adorable. They're so cute with their like baggy trousers and their weird big shoulder pads. They're adorable. And so yeah, I kind of just felt that. I've always preferred shooting to range. I like agility more than tankiness, and it kind of just like fit all the metrics. So ended up being like, yeah, I'll just play Tau. And then there happened to be a guy selling about 3,500 points of Tau for very cheap. So I just went, yeah, sod it. We'll do that. That was it.
It's strange this. All the Tau players I seem to talk to, I'm like, yeah, I prefer ranged over combat.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I must say though, when back in ninth and we had some melee, I loved it, and I miss it so much. Like, yeah. But anyway,
when we say melee, we just mean these basically hero hammer and these like commanders.
It was nice to one-shot a unit in melee. I won't lie. Like,
Absolutely agree. So, obviously, you've been playing Tau as a solo faction, and I think both me and you share a very common, I suppose, understanding that Tau is not a forgiving army. There's definitely some strifes and struggles that we face on our journey. So if you were to kind of pick a few of those kind of barriers that you faced at the start to where you are now, what would you kind of pick, what would you say is your biggest barrier?
Yeah, so I've had a huge problem with running a big crisis brick since I started playing. In ninth, when I started playing, and it was relatively late night, everyone was running a 5-man brick, and the number of times I would just throw that brick away, just not understanding. I remember it got charged by Karandras once, and he killed 4, and I was like, how is this tiny dude killing 4 of these? You know, and I just didn't know. How was I supposed to know he could do that? I was new to the game, didn't know what he was. Apparently, he had 12 attacks. You know, whatever. So that was huge. That kind of defined like my learning for the first 6 to 9 months. Was just that would get tagged by one thing, and I'd lose the game, and I'd be like, oh, cool. So that's probably the biggest. Honestly, that's probably the biggest thing. Was just learning how to play with those, and then I think just being like incredibly anal about understanding spacing. So all of the time, and it came up in a recent RTT where my opponents were like, the way one of the guys said, the way you measured things meant I couldn't do anything. I'd never been told that before, but it sounded like, okay, you move this far, you can charge this far, I'll be this distance away. I do that for every single unit, and it's such a habit that's taken like a very long time to get used to. And a number of times I've lost the game because they've got a 9-inch charge that I accidentally let go, or they pile it in wrong and they tag something. Game's over. So I guess those are the 2 biggest things.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a really, really hot topic, especially with for those newer Tau players out there, or maybe Tau players that are just looking to get to that next level. My philosophy on Tau is that the 2 things that you should always focus on is deployment and positioning, because you can win or lose a game from the get-go based off those 2 things alone. And you've highlighted it in terms of this 6-man crisis brick that's extremely powerful. It puts the fear of God in people, but a clever, more established player will look to stop it from moving. Nobody's afraid of a crisis team that can't move and shoot, but they are afraid of it if it's got movement and shooting. So, you know, little things like people charging, people tagging, that is something that in, I suppose, our Discord that we talk about is pre-planning your deployment and setting it up so that you are aware of the incoming threats. And you've mentioned something that you do, which is, you mentioned it as being a behaviour, which is 100% asking the right questions, threat ranges, pre-measuring everything out, and making sure that your units aren't going to be subjected to a charge or somebody cheekily piling in and consolidating to take away one of your biggest strengths, which is, you know, speed with Tau. And like, what did you do personally to kind of help yourself get over that barrier? What kind of things did you practice?
Yeah, so a lot of it was watching players who are more experienced putting down dice, which is the threat ranges. Just a really simple, like, I don't know, let's just take a Repentia coming out of a Rhino that will eat something. They come out 3, they move 7, they could charge 12. So you just put a dice 22 inches. That is where I need to not be. And then learning to play within that. So that's helpful. I think with UKTC, because for those of you who, I guess, or people who don't play on UKTC, like, because the terrain may change, you aren't able to do this as much on the fly. But you can measure ranges out of buildings before the game begins, right? So you can see the staging points and like that. And it'll come up, I guess, later in our conversation in the Mani game. But there's a point where you can hold your no man's land objective, and they can charge it with a good advance and charge from their home objective. But the charge is an 11-inch charge. So if they get a 6 and then on the advance, and so like you take those risks and you plan them and measure them. But yeah, a lot of it's pre-measuring. A lot of it's just asking all of the time, like, how far can these guys go? Where can they go? And then I would say, like, I'll say to my opponents, like, is there anything that could charge this unit? And I'll just like point, and they will always, like, no opponent has ever gone, I'm not going to tell you. They would always say, yes, this unit could charge it. Oh yeah, you've forgotten that this unit can actually advance and charge. And I'll go, thank you so much. They'll be 6 inches further back, and stuff like that. So yeah, but the number of times I've lost most of the games I lost were because that didn't happen. I remember Lilith connecting once with a cold star from across the map. Solitaire's done it, you know, and it's just, you just wouldn't look at Lilith and think, yeah, she'll pick up a unit. She will.
Absolutely will, if you give her the option to.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that as a new player. I've never looked at Lilith's stat line, for example. thing.
So yeah, I'd say that, for those of you listening in, the advice there from Will is absolute gold. It's make sure you're asking effective questioning. What's your maximum threat range? And I don't just mean about ranged, it's your movement, your advance and charging. So certain kind of basic questions could be, do you have any advance and charge? Do you have anything that can come in outside of 3 inches of deep strikes? And, any other abilities where you can get pluses to the charges, just so you know the maximum threat range of that unit. So if it's got an advance and charge, it's movement 6, then basically if it gets a 6 on the advance roll, it's a 24-inch threat range. If it happens to be getting outside of a vehicle, that becomes 27. So if you're staying 27.1 away, and you mark it with dice, like Will said, then you're kind of taking away any failure points. The key thing is pre-planning, effective questioning, and then building it into your battle plan. So I think some of these things that you mentioned, Will, are very. I hear it all the time. I'm getting tagged, or I'm getting charged, and I can't be aggressive in my positioning because I can just get touched in bad ways from combat armies. So I think the advice that you're given there is absolute gold. What are some of your more rewarding moments? I know obviously we're going to talk in detail about this big achievement, but what would you say is some of your rewarding moments when playing this army, or when your learning curve from when you started to now?
Yeah, I suppose it's been a very gradual thing, which has felt really nice. But I started and I sort of figured, I remember from discussions actually in the Discord that I think it was something may have been that you said if every time I win or lose, it's my fault. And there are some armies and matchups where that isn't true. But for Tau, it's almost always true because we have so much in the kit. And obviously there will be some scenarios where that's just simply not the case. But we don't live in that meta right now, for example. So we're in a good meta. But so I mean, yeah, big rewarding moments have just been when I've seen what I've put them in a position. And I've gone, how would they get out of this? And then I couldn't figure out how they get out of it. They can't, and then that's it. They're pinned by sight lines. They're pinned by movement. They can't make a charge on the turn they need to make a charge. Or the only things they can charge are what I've offered them. And you can sort of, when you get to see that game play out, and then when things connect in the way you want, and then it just folds exactly as you sort of imagine it doing, that feels incredible. And I guess that's only recently started happening. It happened just towards the end of 9th, and then in 10th everything changed, and it's only really started happening for me in the last, maybe 2 months, since December, I would say, with 10th, where I've started going, okay, if this and this happen, which I can make happen, then this is the outcome of the game. So yeah, that's probably the big thing, and that's sort of evolved into things like RTT wins. There's a recent RTT I won, and I dropped 2 points in the entire event. And what was really strange is I could see that and turn 2. I knew I'd won the game, and I've never had that before. I was like, oh, you've moved there, so I'll kill that unit. I'll strike and fade here. They will come out here and do some damage here, which means you won't be able to take this. And you've seen it, and I feel like players have talked about that before. And when I've played against really good players, they will see it. And I'm like, whoo, what's going on? My thing's going to go here, and this is going there. And they're just like, yeah, sure. They're so nonchalant. And they're nonchalant because they've just seen the game. They've seen the outcome of the game from turn 2, and they know. And I've only started getting that, and that's a wonderful thing to be able to feel.
And I will absolutely back that up, because I think in every competitive player's journey, there's that light bulb moment that you finally understand the mindset of someone that is on a higher level than you, because there's that kind of infuriating point where you'll hit somebody like your Mani Cheema or your big name, and you get absolutely stomped, and you're like, I can't understand how that happened. What are they seeing that I don't? But then when you've obviously put in all this preparation, the reps that you've put in, and then all of these little, I suppose, behaviours that you've started to change, like your pre-measuring, your effective questioning, you're practicing with your army, finding your kind of feet in terms of what style you like to play. When it all clicks, and then you start to look at the game differently and decompartmentalise your victory path, then it just goes, and you're like, oh, I understand the game now. I understand
Yeah.
Now, how these other top players are approaching the game, and it's all about scoring. And you mentioned, obviously, your RTT where you only dropped 2 points. And in this event, spoiler alert, you only dropped 25 points, and the only game that you dropped the most out of those was against Mani, which was still a very close game. So you averaged 95 points per game of a 5-round major.
Yeah, it felt good.
That is really good, and a lot of Tau players are struggling to score primaries, and secondaries can be easier for Tau, but the primaries is a difficult or a bone of contention. So we've got plenty of questions that we'll obviously come to later, which is probably going to be steerers to the answer to how you've been tackling your scoring element to it. But if we kind of just touch on, you've been playing Tau for over a year, and you've been part of this program for kind of 8 months. Yes, it's a little bit of a plug, I suppose, but if I'm not going to plug myself, then who is? I mean, what would you say has been your most enjoyable or most beneficial moments for being part of the Puretide program? If there's any people out there that are wanting or considering joining, what would you say to them?
So I mean, it's been very beneficial for me, for sure. I think I love the list discussions. They're very helpful. I would perhaps say the most useful thing is when we have these discussions, there's like a scoreboard screenshots channel, and we discuss. So the players who played the game will discuss the game and ask questions, and we'll create a conversation. Often, and people are playing enough games in the week that these conversations happen all the time. And I learned so much from reading them. So people will play. When Necrons first came out, I can't remember who it was, but they played a game against like 5 Catan, and they were like, tried to kill the Catan with my Crisis, did 8 wounds, and then someone did the maths. Oh, they should, by the way, statistically do 9 wounds.
Yeah.
And then I played Necrons 3 days later and went, well, I'm not going to make that mistake. Brilliant. I know I won't kill it. And I thought, if I'm doing 9 wounds and I have grenade strat and breaches, actually that's 12 wounds. So someone had already done the maths. I didn't lose. I won that game, and I won it because someone lost it in the chat 4 days earlier. And so for me, that's invaluable. And then I think the way we talk about deployment and things is very useful. Respectively, I guess I'm on UKTC terrain almost all the time, so I'm less concerned about the others. But if a lot of the chat is about the other terrain formats, which is very useful, and it's just getting that kind of conversations and ideas. I think as well, as I mentioned, with watching players measure things out and asking the questions again, that will come from watching good players play. But then part of that will be part of that is from your masterclasses, for example, where you'll go you'll play a game, and then you'll ask the questions, and I'll go, that's a good question to ask. Yeah. And it's cool. Takes a note. We'll ask that question. We'll go, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good question to ask. Am I willing to risk this charge? Am I not? So I guess that's not really a coherent answer, but hopefully it's
no, definitely. I mean, it's I think this is the reason why obviously not just your performance, but seeing you represent the Puretide program at the event and do very well, and hearing you just talk about the behaviours that you've, I suppose, instilled into yourself, is pretty much living, breathing. It's basically enacting what we live and breathe in our Discord. We talk about it's not about the damage, it's about the points that you're scoring. It's about how you are making decisions within the game to influence that scoreboard into your favour. And obviously, your games, you on day one you were on 300 out of 300. So clearly, your analytical approach to the game and how I'm going to be scoring my points, that was your focus, and you executed it perfectly. Absolutely perfectly, because you didn't drop a point. And it's not about all the games just getting 100, because there will be moments where an opponent like Mani Cheema or anybody of or a decent level of player will be dropping you points, and you'll retaliate in the same way. So I'm just really proud of how you've executed what we discussed in our scoreboard screenshots and that information that we're getting as part of the community together as the greater good. And we're talking about the games that we're playing, the experiences that we're having, and sharing that information. But also that philosophy that you don't need guns to win games, you just need points. So how are you approaching the game from a point perspective? And that's, for me, one of the most important lessons that I teach. It's the look at how many points you're scoring now. I don't care if it's 10, 15, 20, 30. I'm not bothered. Even if it's 2, it's fine. It's how do you get to 10, 15, and then how do you get to 20, 25, 30, and normal, and how do you kind of build yourself a progression plan to start scoring points, and then you've clearly got yourself now to a position where you're scoring consistently high, and that comes with your decisions that you're making in game. So, on that note, I think we should talk about the start of this journey at this event. So, talk us through your list, Will, because it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the list. So, I mean, a lot of credit goes firstly to Zorro for helping write this for sure. He runs a lot of lists and talks. We'll talk about them, but it's like heavily inspired by something that he sort of figured out, and then I sort of made some changes to it. So I don't know. Do you want me to like actually say what's in the list and what I use, and like just the basic concept of it?
Well, I'll tell you what. I will read out the list, and if you kind of talk about your concepts of the list and how you're planning to use it. So obviously you called it a very unoriginal list.
Which it is. Let's be honest.
You took Unva. You took Commander Shadowsun as your warlord. And then you had a commander in Cold Star with the 4 cyclics, a marker drone, a shield drone, and the exemplar of the Kion enhancement. You then took a standard XB8 commander in Crisis Battlesuit with the precision of the Hunter. He also had the 4 cyclics, the 1 gun drone and marker drone, which is interesting, but I'm sure you'll highlight why. Darkstrider. I wonder why you took Darkstrider. Breacher, Devilfish. Breacher, Devilfish. And in those breaches, you've got a gun drone and guardian drone. Obviously, the Seeker missiles come with the Devilfish as standard, and you've given the gun drones to be able to do actions in the advance and stuff. You've got a unit of 2 broadsides that have the heavy rail rifles, the 2 missile drones, the 1 Seeker missile, and the 1 twin plasma each. You've got your 400-point crisis bricks, that's 6 crisis suits, armed with 2 plasma, 1 cyclic, and a shield generator. And they're each armed with 2 shield drones. You've got a Pathfinder team with the gun drone, the recon drone on the Chasui, and you've got the semi-automatic grenade launcher, and then you've got 9 Pathfinders, but 3 of those are armed with the iron rifles. And then you've got your 2 stock Riptides. I've got the iron accelerator, 2 missile drones, and the twin plasma as their secondary weapon. And then you've got a unit of 3 stealth suits. Obviously, the stealth team Shaspray has the battlesuit support system to fall back and shoot. He's armed with the fusion blaster, and he's got a gun drone, a marker drone, and the homing beacon. And then the 2 standard stealth suits have got burst cannons as standard, and then 2 units of Tetras. So a very well balanced list, and it's good to see. Talk us through the theory behind it, then.
Yeah, so I've been very torn about the kind of lists I want to be running. So I think that's just worth saying. But I landed on this because, well, it has a few of the things I like. So one of the things that I like long range. I'm not a huge fan of every gun in my army being 18 inches or less.
Yeah.
And I think I've talked about pre-measuring already with what I do, but my opponents will do it to me. And adding 6 inches to, say, the plasma rifles, having Riptides that don't care, these things help a lot, at least for me, to be able to get inside angles or push range back and so on. So the list, I still wanted to have the 6 crisis with the 1 cyclic, 2 plasmas. It's pretty worth explaining that the tech here is that between the Cold Star and the crisis commanders, that's 30 cyclic shots, and that will kill any unit in the game that's like medium, even heavy to light infantry, which means I almost always split fire the plasmas. And 12 split fired shots with sustained 2, even though they're hitting on 5s, going into, let's say, a Rhino or a Dreadnought or something, is some damage off. And that damage off, usually when coupled with Riptide's chip damage, will actually start picking things up. So very often what I would do is that, the Riptide will hit a transport and do 4 wounds, who cares? That's enough wounds that the plasmas will then kill it. So Riptides don't kill anything T9 or above reliably, and neither do the plasma shots, but when you combine the 2, they start actually damaging, exocrines or rhinos or whatever it is. So I really like being able to split fire. That's why I went for 1 cyclic and 2 plasma, not 2 cyclics, 1 plasma. So that's sort of the tech there. Whether or not a 6-man crisis blob is optimal is a different question entirely. But for me, it works out. I like the threat it produces. I'm able to protect them well enough now. And the big thing I'm learning is when to suicide them, which feels awful. But in turn 3 and 4, in maybe a quarter of my games, I will strike and fade them forward. I will steal the opponent's home field objective or their no man's land objective. I will put 8 OC on it, something like that, with the bodies, maybe 10. And if they don't turn their entire army to kill it, they lose. And when they turn their entire army to kill it, they lose because everything else is shoved up. And that's something I learned to do. I played a game against a friend of mine, a guy called Josh, and he'd defended his castle, and I was like, wait a sec, I can't get any OC there, and I realised Crisis could do it. So that's what I did. I just slapped 5 bodies on it, took his home objective from him, got capture in the outpost, and thought I should do this more often. And it's something I love being able to do. So and obviously with only 10 hazardous rolls, I lose like 1 to 2 crisis suits, like maybe on hazardous a game, sorry. So I don't really care. So that's them. The Crisis Commander with precision, I'm in love with. That thing has done absolute bits for me in every game. I always drop him turn 3. I never drop him turn 2 unless it's unless it's against a T4 or below target, so I don't need +1 to wound. But I love having at least 1 deep strike threat, and if you look at my list, there isn't really anything else that could do it. And so that 1 commander forces them to screen, which is an insane amount of value. I mean, it's 100 points to force them to screen for 3 turns, which I will take. And then he will pick up things. Like that man picks things up. I've had him one-shot armigers, like take 8 wounds off exocrines, things like that. It's so reliable. It's pretty reliable, basically, 82 damage too. The reason he has a gun drone, you asked, is so he can advance an action. He doesn't have assault on any of his weapons, which is tragic. So he just lands. Pray I don't roll 2 hazardous on my 4 hazardous checks, which I'm not going to lie to you, I've done.
I was about to say.
He has 5 wounds. He has 5 wounds. So you either put 2 shield drones and go to 7, so you survive the hazardous. But then his spotting, it doesn't give you ignores cover, and then you can't advance an action. And he only moves 8, so like he's pretty bleak. And most of the time when I use him, he's never getting spotted for. And the reason is because he's shooting something inside a big L or inside a building, and he's coming behind it. So he will spot. And because he's spotting, I want him to have a marker drone to take off cover, mostly for riptides and things. And one of the weaknesses of my list is probably that I don't have enough like spotting units or observing units. I have 2 Tetras, 1 stealth team, and then Shadow Sun to help. So the fact that he can come down and spot, take cover off, and then he doesn't really care. He just blasts a unit with 12 shots, like essentially almost always hitting on 2s because of +1. And then strength 8, so he's wounding even tanky things on 4s, which is absolutely fine. So yeah, that's the tech there. Obviously, if I double 1 the hazardous, it is heartbreaking. It has happened once, except I rolled 3 ones, so I was like, well,
yeah,
who cares?
Well, he would have died anyway.
Yeah, so that's that really. They're the unique bits, I suppose. Shadow Sun and 2 Riptides. I love long range guns. I think Riptides are banging. I think they are everything I wish a Ghost Kill was. When I was using Ghost Kills, I was using them like Riptides, and now I have a Riptide. I understand that like the fact that Riptides actually kill units, so that is great. The OC4, which is just so obnoxious.
It's good when you use them with other stuff as well. Like 2 Riptides going on a point being OC8 is crucial.
Yeah. Usually, I guess it comes down to tactics a bit, but I would send 1 Riptide, 1 Breacher Fish one way, and then 1 Breacher Fish in the middle, and then a Riptide in the Crisis team in a different direction. And so, what would happen is like between the Devilfish and a Riptide, that's a lot of OC, and then they have breaches inside, so I don't even have to double them up, but I can. And then Shadow Sun goes up there with them for the reroll 1s, and it just is a nice package of sort of deliverance. And it was very helpful, like Shadow Sun being able to throw herself out as a lone op, being able to spot because of that, and not take any return fire is very nice as well. Because that's something I noticed, that like good players will pick apart Tetras the second you
expose them,
swing them out on things. So
so I like the way you designed the list. I like the fact that you've got your 2 lone ops, and And I think that is going to be very important consideration. I know I'm not a huge fan of the lone ops because I feel that it's a crutch, but in the upcoming guard meta, then I think it is going to be crucial. Depends on what we get on our new codex, because some crude shenanigans, but let's not let it dilute. Let's keep the conversation on point into your list. But I do like how you balanced everything. I mean, obviously the XB8 commander, he's an XB8 commander, so he moves 10, so it makes sense why you've got the gun drone.
Yeah, 10, not 8,
to
sorry.
10.
Yeah.
But obviously the gun drone, just in case everything's dead around him, and he can just go on advance and do an action for you.
Yes.
I obviously tend to just put 2 shield drones on there, but I like the way that you've done the marker drone because he's got the precision hunter, which is +1 to hit anyway. And obviously, if you did want to use coordinate to engage, he's got the cover. He's got a marker drone, and it gives the other unit ignore cover, and he's going to be hitting on 2s anyway. But you could do the coordinate to engage to give him the ignore cover. So it's a nice little tech piece there, and like you said, he does absolutely slap because of precision hunter, +1 to hit, +1 to wound, +1 to wound from turn 3 onwards. But you already said you only bring him in from turn 3. Your crisis suits, I loved the way you were explaining your 6-man crisis suit, because once they've done the damage, stop firing and fading them defensively, go and push, because it's such a big unit for people to have to deal with that you clearly executed it by going, here you are, come and deal with them. You probably will deal with them, but they've done their job now, and then you've just revealed your entire force, and then the rest of it picks you up. And I think that's that trading piece, isn't it? That's here's my hammer. Come and deal with the hammer, because you have to, otherwise it's going to cripple your entire army. Okay, you've dealt with it. Now all the rest of my hammers deal with you. Problem solved.
Yeah. It literally, I had a league game against a friend last night. I did that exact thing. They jumped forward, they picked up Manius and his unit, Manius Cadre and his unit. They strike and faded for Storm Hostile Objective, got me 5 points. And he had 3 Dreadnoughts, a unit of Terminators in reserve, and some Suppressors in reserve. And they all came and dealt with that one unit, and I won the game because they were all on the other side of the map. Yeah. So and if I hadn't done that, it allows my opponent to breathe, but he couldn't. He had a 5-man. It was one of the guys that died, so it was a 5-man crisis unit at Cold Star, and he shot every Dreadnought into it. He charged it with Terminators. He shot all the suppressors out of it, everything. The Cold Star ironically lived on 3 wounds. It didn't matter. It was inconsequential because he just shot back the suppressors, killed them, and then died. But to his own hazard for this. But it didn't matter. That was it. He was there. So it's not often that I do it. Like I said, probably 1 in 4 games maybe. But it feels so good to be able to do, just to be able to launch that unit forward.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you mentioned as well, and it takes me back to 9th edition, is using your Riptides with the Breachers, because they're the perfect combo. Yeah. It's so infantry beasts, because they are beastly when they start shooting. They're shotguns hitting on 3s, and they don't always have to be spotted either, because they're hitting on 3s normally. The reroll wounds when they're on objective. Then you've got a Riptide joining them. It's like, meet my big brother. Yeah, he's in this massive mech suit.
And the relationship of damage profiles between a Riptide and Breachers is amazing, because when you include the grenade strat, they can pick up tank things that neither of them can pick up because of the damage profiles. So that feels very good. Coupled with reroll 1s to hit with Shadow Sun, who just goes very far, really is quite nice. So yeah, I like Riptides and Breachers working very well together. They just seem to cover each other's backs really, really well. Which feels good. And then there's random Devilfish just to be annoying, because they're so hard to kill. Which I know everyone's already on board the Devilfish hype train, but it's unbelievable how annoying they are to kill for opponents. That stat line is so annoying.
It's the 13 wounds, isn't it? It's the 13 wounds.
Yeah, T9.
T9.
It's ridiculous. 13 wounds. It's so much better than a Rhino. It's the same points.
Yeah.
So it's those things are cracked. It's that little package. Of being able to send it forward and deal with, if they charge it with something that's T9 plus, it's rerolling wounds, grenade, Riptide will hopefully be able to deal with that. If it's 20 infantry boys, Breachers will deal with that. So yeah.
Well, heard it from the horse's mouth, people. Just Breachers and Riptides. Let's go in unison.
That's a great list.
Yeah. No, I like it. It's really good. So, right, let's get straight into the event then. So your round 1 was, again, it was on UKTC, and it was the priority targets, and it was versus Dark Angels, right?
It was against Dark Angels, yeah. Firestorm, Assault Force. Not too much to say. My opponent, lovely chap, but wasn't the most competitive of collected first tournament, that kind of vibe. So we had a lovely game, but it was quite matter of fact. Bless him, he left a hand hanging out of the ruins of his I think they're called Eradicator squads or Eliminators or something, like a big 6-man boys, and I picked the entire unit up, and he was like, shit. I forgot that the Land Raider Redeemer will pick up breaches in Overwatch.
Oh, it will.
I did not realize it was like D6 plus 3 each gun. So that was that. I literally threw the breaches out, being like, I thought I'd use the breaches to body block the Land Raider so that he wasn't charging me. So he picked the entire unit up, and I thought, what am I doing? I don't know. I just assumed it was like a normal flamer, like D6 or D6 plus 1. But anyway, that was dumb. But other than that, it was pretty a straightforward game, respectfully. I mean, we had a lovely game. It was just, So that was that really.
Was
it felt good to get a win on the board, but I wasn't,
So was there any kind of obviously don't underestimate a Land Raider Redeemer with its flamers because it's great for Overwatch. Was there any kind of questions you asked him pre-game to go back into that thing that you were saying before about effective questioning and the pre-measuring? Was there anything that you were asking him at the beginning of that game that you were worried about?
So I know the entire detachment advances and shoots.
Yeah.
And then the big thing was that the Land Raider could do that and then still get the boys out and charge. I thought that's actually quite a scary tech piece. Like, that Land Raider can go 20 inches or 18 inches, unload, they can charge, and it's still shooting. So that was important. And I think learning what can do that and those ranges, like getting used to Hellblaster's range and things like that. Knowing that Strike and Fade happens before the Hellblaster shoots, very helpful.
Yeah.
But also you can shoot the Firestorm detachment and they can get out and shoot back.
Yeah.
And the Strike and Fade happens after that. So it's really annoying, but that's really important. So knowing your rules difference there is a big deal. But then part of it, I think, is also knowing. I mean, if I'd thought about it, I thought, okay, Kroot or Breachers are not going to be able to screen a Land Raider Redeemer because it's going to flamer them. And this actually came up in my later games, which is why I mention it now, because I was going to do the exact same trick, and I was like, wait, what gun does your Tyrannofex have? And he's like, it has a flamer. And I thought, I remember what I did last time. I'm not going to lose my entire unit of breaches to that. So there were the key things. I think the only big cool good lesson learned here for me was understanding and allowing for when people weight most of their army on one flank and not the other, you can detilt that by doing the exact same. And because we are better at cutting and running than most people are better at hunting us down, being able to play that game. So once I saw where things were going to be, I just reshifted my focus. I sacrificed units, and then everything else just moved out. And that was how I was able to be so consistent with primary, because I just reweighted everything. So something worth maybe just looking at, I guess, for new players, or newer players, figure out where their threats are and just sort of think, how do I just not? Can I just leave? Sometimes you can just walk your units away.
You can walk units away, and it's like effectively, it's almost like a swirl in the game. But if you've got the better speed and your army's more mobile, I suppose, then you can always come back to that threat later. And obviously, what you were trying to do with the Land Raider Redeemer, which is in retrospect was the wrong move, but in theory, though, I'm going to block you in here and focus on other stuff.
Yeah.
But quickly, whoops, I won't make that mistake again. And that game, I believe, was 100 for you. And can you remember what he scored?
35. Yeah, 35.
Okay, so quite a whitewash. Lovely opponent, but again, your speed, your mobile, your shooting, we don't really struggle into Marines. And I think with the lists, with the Crisis Suit loadouts, and we've been discussing this for months, I think even prior to LVO, I was saying the double plasma, one cyclic is really good for split fire, and the plasmas into Marines are just golden. Flat 3 damage is just great anyway in AP3, so that will have definitely helped you out in that game, because everyone is killing an Eradicator or a Terminator or whatever it may be. It's dead. Aggressor, Terminator, don't care, get off the board.
100%.
So, round 2, you went on Supply Drop, and then you went against Sisters. I'm really interested in this one, so Same pattern as before. What kind of pre-questions were you asking the sisters player? What were you trying to establish?
So sisters, I am just about to start collecting sisters. I think they are stunning, and I'm terrible at painting, so I'm going to try learning how to paint. The sisters are wicked. So I understood how they worked. Obviously, there's the key questions of like, advancing and charging, and what the Exorcist's indirect looks like, which I knew, but like it's really worth understanding that profile because it's the weirdest indirect profile in the game, I would say. Which I think is like D6 plus 1 shots at strength 10, AP 2, damage D6 or something. And it's like, what? Like the fact that it can one shot a devilfish indirectly is, and then they have miracle dice to spike. Anyway, I knew the threat ranges of the units, which was really cool, and I knew the importance of rapid ingressing Paragon warsuits with more than Val. They basically, sisters players have to do that because their unit is actually quite slow.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's a walker vehicle, so it moves like 8 inches. They're also squishy as hell, by the way, in case you've never seen their stat line. Like, look at their stat line, and you will laugh at how much those things die. But boy, do they!
Like a skinny broadside. Skinny broadside.
Yeah. Like I was like with a great melee. I was like respect the Exorcist, respect the rapid ingress, and then otherwise like measure the ranges. And with rhinos, again, it's 3 inches. So Repentia Arcos move 7, so +3 is 10. I just measure that. And sisters with fate dice, miracle dice, will guarantee like 9-10 inch charges. Like they would just go, I'm going to use an auto 6 on it, and then that 11-inch charge that you hoped wouldn't happen is not as bad. So that's sisters. A big credit to Jerobel from the Discord on this. So supply drop I've never played, and he was like, because you don't get points for holding your home objective.
Nope.
And what he said to me was, are you aware that the last objective is worth as many as holding each of the middle ones in turn 2 and 3? And I was like, no, that makes sense. He was like, so why not just hold the middle ones in turn 2 and 3? And I was like, that's quite profound. So what I did was, so the guy scored 24, 10 for painted, and he didn't get a single point on primary the whole game.
Yeah.
Because what I did is I was like, well, I'll just throw every unit I have on all of the objectives early on, and then that's just like 15 points. I'm just farming points. And that's literally what happened. So I went 10, 15, 16, 15. He did take me off one, but making it so melee armies like sisters, like hanging a breacher so that they have to charge 1 breacher, but then using the -2 strat to make that charge just god awful is really helpful. Being able to re-embark does the same. Just using a fish to hold objectives as well, like happily suiciding a fish to 3 castigators, knowing that if it dies, the breaches come out. They are battle shops, just as a reminder to people, so you can't -2 when that happens. But things like that just really helped, yeah. So I changed my mindset a bit, but I knew the threat ranges, which was really helpful. And then with supply drop, I knew which we got. Like my objective was the first one to go, and his objective was the one that stayed. And I thought, okay, but my army's faster than his. So what I wanted to do was pull as many of his resources up there as possible, and then bait and switch all the way out. And essentially, that's essentially what I did. So it was a lovely player, like great game. You've got to be careful as Tau. Like we've talked about having units getting tags, and the biggest thing I think we've got to fear in that matchup is resurrecting characters.
Yeah.
And those characters tagging crisis suits, because like for example, a Canoness can get a 2-up invuln. So if she reses the Canoness and the Canoness charges the crisis team, it's not going to do any damage. But what it will do is pop a 2-up invuln and lock you in combat for 1 turn. And that can lose you the game. Like as every Tower player would know, like 1 turn of 500 points of your army not shooting could be the game. So I tried to play around that, having done that very thing in a practice game with Mappo and Hobbsy, but like from the Discord, from your Discord. But yes, that was something I kept an eye on. But otherwise, it was just spacing and then putting unmovable things on objectives.
I think the supply drop is a really smart move because it's a very weird one, because when I played at LVO on supply drop, I was against a Marine player, and I did just that. I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to constantly deny you primary, and then the one that's left at the end, if I'm going second, I'm going to get it anyway. If I'm going first, I'll just push out on the all objectives a turn earlier, or like on turn 4 to guarantee the 15. As long as I keep denying you, and I'm going to be gaining the primary by putting a devilfish, and if you kill it, I fall out breaches. I'm like, yeah, cool, thanks for the primary.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
So actually that taking the initiative early doors on supply drop is key. Simple as that.
It really helped.
It really helps. And you obviously didn't give the poor guy a single primary point, so well done.
No, it was a little bit sad. Yeah. I mean, it was a lovely game. It was just like, yeah, he just couldn't take me off, you know. And sisters don't have much in the way of like a unit to stop a random Riptide holding an objective. Like that's not their MO, unless they have like tons of like Zephyrim or something. But again, you know, that wasn't the kind of list he was running. So I think Tau have a really hard matchup into like super MSU sisters, but I think that's a different problem. But the kind of list he was running, not the case. And it helped. Like knowing how tanky Arcos are, for example, meant I ignored them. Knowing the entire system mechanic is if you do one wound to them, they get +1 to hit, and then if they're below half, +1 to wound. So you just don't chip units. Just pick a unit, kill it, until there's nothing left. So yeah, that was quite a nice matchup. But knowing the sisters matchup was very helpful.
And then Nids.
Yes, Nids.
Round 3
so
was Purge the Foe and Sticky Objectives.
God bless. So frankly, this is the game I was most nervous about. Like in concept, the third game on a GT is exhausting. It's always where I lose. I'm just so tired. I'm not really thinking, and I've had some like very mid-table games where like the players are really like sweaty for like the couple of points and really, really, you know, push you for, oh, you've got line of sight here, and how this charge is actually 8 inches, not 9. So I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a bit nervous, and Nids are a really annoying army to play just because they have so much little things that do things. Their dice can spike, like you have zero idea how much damage an Exocrine is going to do to any of your units. And then the guy was like, by the way, it's Purge the Foe, and I've got a Spireball. And then I was like, oh yeah, cool, your secondaries are going to suck. And then he mentioned that it's Sticky Objectives and in your command phase, and then the army rule for the battle shock obviously won't get around that. I thought, okay, I can chill out a bit. Like, I can relax. Then I got second, and I was like, oh, okay, I've won this game. And the guy knew it as well. Like, he was like, I don't really know how I win this against, like, with all of that being stacked up against him, going second on Purge the Foe, having a Fireball, and then it also being sticky. Like, it was really weighted in my favor. I learned a ton about how tanky Nids are. Like, it's so annoying. And like, as I've spoken to before, like, Riptides will not kill tanks. That is not what they do. Like, yeah, it's nice to take 4 or 8 wounds if you're lucky off a vehicle, but like, or a big thing. But honestly, like, it's so unbelievably unreliable. But it was just, and I've also struggled in the past. Crisis suits into Tyranids will pick up a Maliceptor. And Maliceptors aren't in units of 3 where you can try and pick up the whole unit. They're in units of 1. And I find into the Tyranid matchup, having overlapping firing lines is really important to guarantee that like a bug dies. So like making sure a Riptide is seeing the same, I don't know, Exocrine that your broadsides are in case your broadsides fail, and so on, is really important. And that's where I really enjoyed having the Riptides with a 10-inch move and in their insane range, because I was able to constantly bounce them around the map, making sure I had angles into Tyranids. And into that matchup, we outranged them, because Exocrine's a 36-inch range. So we outranged them, we mostly outmaneuver them, and then, oddly, they aren't very good at dealing with the T9, like Tyranids as an army. And having 4 T9 units in the 2 Devilfish and 2 Riptides like really helps with that matchup. So it felt pretty good to play. I felt like I played it well, but I think Purge the Foe and Sticky Objectives just really kind of buried it. And then getting turn 2, like doing second. You know?
Perfect storm.
It really was, yeah. And you know, I mean, I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, well, maybe just Tyranid players accept they lose round 3 of every UK Super Major. And I thought, that's bloody miserable. Like if that, like, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like if someone says you get an extra, like, I don't know, bring it down was like written into a rule, you know? Like we would just cry. But anyway, so that was that matchup. Yeah.
And after a successful day 1, you know, you're there oh, well, feeling really good. Maybe your hands are sweaty, mom's spaghetti, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm going to go and have a beer now. And then round 4 pairings go up and it's like, bam, Mani Cheema.
It was, yes, Mani Cheema. So, I guess just for a little bit of context on my mindset, I was like, my dream path to the 4-1, which was my ambition, was I win the first 3 games, I get paired against some very good, well-known player, so I go to bed knowing I've lost. I turn up in the morning knowing I've lost, I score as many points as I can, and then I fight for game 5. That honestly was like my mindset just by default. So when it all went that way, I was like, you get what you asked for.
Yeah. Now, you see, this is where I suppose I will completely agree with you. I used to have that same mindset.
Yeah.
And then I started to put on my big boy pants and think, actually, sod this, ignore the name, do not get starstruck, and just play your game. You have a plan, you've prepared, you want to go your 4-1, so you got your goal. Okay? At no point should you ever doubt yourself. You should just go in with that mentality of like, I have obviously a goal that I want to achieve, but if I just focus on my behaviours, the outcome will look after itself. So, yes, you're going against Mani Cheema. There's probably a little bit of like self-realisation of like, well, I did say that, you know, I'm going to play a big name and lose.
I did it to myself.
You did it to yourself, but the game in itself was a nail-biter. And I actually heard on the grapevine when I was chatting in the Team England chat that, you know, I brought it up and they were like, oh yeah, you know, Vic VJ was like, you know, actually it was a real close game and there was a couple of clutch moments where Manny rolled some dice against Shadowsun near the end and there was a couple of other things that could have swung your way. Yeah. So that game was 86 to Manny and 80 to you. So we've got a little bit of an exercise now. We're going to jump into TTS. And we're not going to go through the full game because, one, I'm not Manny, I have no interest in Custodes, and two, it's just more to kind of get in the mindset of like Will's decisions within the game on a deployment and the positioning that was happening throughout the game to help you guys understand how Will kept this to such a close game. And Mani Cheema needs no introduction, but for those of you who don't know him, he was the world's top ITC player, basically number 1 in the world. And if you're going to get starstruck from someone, then okay, cool. Yeah. Just casually going in round 4, against the top player in the world. But you know he's running Custodes, which are apparently then the new bully on the blocks. But Will rocks up with Shadowsun and gives it a game. So let's see. Let's go into it.
Yeah, I guess while you're loading that up. So like I definitely was a little starstruck. I actually hit it when I was like faffing around deploying my army. I actually smacked this piece of terrain and sent 10 Pathfinders off the map, which was dreadfully embarrassing. And he was like, "It's okay, man. You can be chill." So he was really nice. I just wanted to like throw that out there. Like, he was actually an utterly delightful opponent. But my ambition for this game was get to 80 points. So I was like, if I lose with 80 points, I could get 4-1 and do really well. Genuinely, I hadn't thought. I was like, I can try and win, and at least Custodes are a straightforward army. I'm not going to get like Eldar'd by some nonsense. But you know, in my brain, I was like, okay, that's the ambition. So yeah. Anyway, it went very well.
It did. Well, you got your 80 points. So let's just run you through. I'll run you through Manny's deployment. Now, give or take, this might not be absolutely spot on,
but
it's
close enough. It's from like photos in memory.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, Manny will have 2 units of Wardens here with a Blade Champion in each unit, which gives the Wardens the advance and charge once per game. And they also have access to, when they're being led by a character, they've got the 4-up Feel No Pain that they can pop, but they have to declare that at the start of any phase. So he's got 3 units of them, and he's got 2 of them deployed in this big L here. He's got the other unit deployed centrally, with, again, another Blade Champion in there. You've got a Guardian squad with Trajan here, and then you've got a unit of 5 Guardians over here pushing over to that flank, and a unit of 4 Custodian Guards here with a unit of 5 Prosecutors at the back just to screen and hold the backfield and potentially do secondaries. Now, I believe Mani did go bring it down and deploy teleport homers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's with Mani going fixed secondaries. And what did you go for? Did you go for fixed or tactical?
I went tactical because I just knew I was never going to. I mean, I was never going to kill 4 characters.
Yep.
And I was right. I killed 1. So.
Yep. And also going near the middle allows the Custodians to get closer to you. So tactical with your speed and your ability to be everywhere is definitely the right choice. So talk us through your deployment then.
Yeah. So I'm aware that the Custodes have They have okay shooting within 24-inch range, but it's not going to pick up anything too drastic. I mean, it will hurt the Crisis Brick, but other than that. I wanted to open up as many lines of firing as possible, so you'll see the Riptides, they're a little bit closer in than that, but the Riptides, wonderful. They were there, so they could essentially come this way to fire down this line,
or that way.
Or come here and fire down that line. So that was the ambition. The Crisis Suit, I like here, it can move forward up and over this wall and land on there, which means I can hold that objective if Ornvar fails his advance. Which he did. For those interested. The Tetras here, they can do signals, they can look down this firing line, they can come here and look down there, or they can actually go onto this objective as well against an army that I'm not afraid of a melee of. Again, obviously, into Custodes I am. Over here, what I do is that the Pathfinders are set up so they can scout me back, the Grundy maneuver, and the Devilfish with a Dark Strider forward. And then this Breacher team is set up here so they can re-embark into that fish once the Pathfinders go out and screen. So basically it's at 1 screen, 2 screens. And then inside this Devilfish, which is in my deployment zone, is the other 10 Breachers. Again, they can either do 1 screen, 2 screen, or what I've learned is that I figured basically his entire army can reroll advances and charges. It's not literally his entire army, but it's like scary units. And I figured having Breachers being the things to block that with the -2 might be helpful. So being able to be flexible with this Devilfish, potentially put it up to take this, or to get back more control of the center would be handy. So that's the thinking. The Stealth Suits are in the middle so they can leap forward and take an objective or do deploy. And then Shadow Sun is there because within 10-inch movement, she can basically give reroll 1s to any unit in my army, except for the Crisis team, but they'll always be spotted for by Tetras.
Exactly.
The broadsides for clarity are in reserve. Into armies like Custodes and Grey Knights, I do that, and the reason I do that is because I love being able to pull an angle that gets me some absolute savagery, like in terms of damage. And also reserves on this map, you may notice that you can actually hold these side objectives if you come in from reserve.
Yes.
So if Mani had charged me with, say, the unit that will end up holding this, I could have just come in here and taken this objective. So it was something I was thinking about, but I basically wanted to guarantee an angle, and I really hoped he might scream with, obviously he didn't scream with anything, but I figured I might as well bring them in later.
Yeah, so you got your broadside, broadsides and your single crisis commander, a deep strike in the broadsides and strat reserve, and then obviously in the right way you've set up your potential screens. And I had this exact same practice game versus Custodes. He didn't have the 3 Wardens, he had 2 units, and he had the other kind of flavour Draxis or whatever, so really good shooting unit.
Yes, we're seeing that,
But I did the same as you. I focused on having a screen out, if I was to draw some boxes, having a screen out here to slow down here, and to slow down here, to stop the advancement. They're obviously always going to go to the middle, so having a screen being able to effectively go, no, you're not touching this objective, and no, you're not touching this objective here. I want to keep you hemmed into the middle where my firing lanes are juicy. So it sounds like you had a very identical plan. Your Riptides can shoot down this angle, down that angle, and then obviously you have your screens in position, or your units in position to screen when needed. So who went first in this game?
Mani went first.
And I can presume he pushed up this unit here.
Yeah, so I can kind of help with the movement, but basically, like most of his army rerolls advances and charges.
Yeah.
So he kind of just fished for good ones. So essentially, all of, I think that unit, the unit went in there, and another unit came from this side into here. and kind of like squeezed up into there.
Yeah.
I think then this unit went here, and then this. Oh, I can't. Yeah. Another unit went into the middle. I think it was a Blade Champion unit, and then the other one just filled the gap. So it's ended up being, I think, 2 units there, 2 units here, basically. It fits somewhere like that.
Yes, it will have basically had
it
them.
Looks like he has like 10 plus boys in there or something, so I'm not sure exactly how it was set up. Maybe it was the 4-man unit that pushed forward, actually, instead of a Blade Champion unit, but it was something similar.
Sure. I can kind of imagine he'll have just shoved as many stuff, and he said he rolled
literally,
a 5 on everything, right?
Yeah, and he basically he rerolls his advances. He got this Guardian unit forward to here as well, and just putting out on this flank and this unit up there. So there was just everything just kind of came at me as you would expect.
Yeah.
But I basically had not a single angle that I could take.
Makes sense. And then obviously this other unit here just kind of staged back into there.
Yeah, they all set themselves up 1 inch. Yeah. It looks something like this. The prosecutors obviously were tighter in. You know how it is. But she's not going to just hang one. But yes. So it looked like this. Obviously, I understood like the concept of staging.
Yeah.
So I knew that like once these units charged, these ones would be the next ones to come out and fill the slot, and just hit me in 2 waves. So in my turn, for clarity, I'd pushed forward. I'd scout moved with the fish and moved all the breaches, the Pathfinders back in. They obviously weren't there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that was that. I then disembarked the Pathfinders.
Yeah.
On my turn to create as best a screen as I could. One of his units here had the ability to reactive move, not like 9 inches if I went near him, which I was really worried about.
Yeah.
But then I thought to myself, if I screen this properly, I'm not too worried. So what I ended up doing was I ended up putting a model like this to make that wherever that 9-inch move went, it was pretty bad for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up not doing it because of that, which I was quite happy with. And it kind of looked like this, my screen. It was a little bit further up this way, to be fair. But it ended up looking like this, something like that. 1 inch off the wall, the usual. And the idea being, this is going to soften this blow coming in this way. They're all going to get stuck around here. My crisis suit team came forward and landed here.
Yeah.
And we measured this charge, and it was an 11-inch charge from there to there. Which I said, if he makes an 11-inch charge, even with a reroll, and I lose off that, then fair enough. But I would take this risk in any game that I didn't think unless I thought they were a terrible player and I thought I was guaranteed to win, I would pick that. So all of our push forwards, as we've just done, and then I set the Riptides up in advance, so one went here and the other one went here, because I knew the lines I would want them to have.
Yeah.
And then this fish swung out for some reason, and then these breaches came back to here to again make this charge
impossible.
From here, what I was worried about was this charge here to make that impossible.
Yeah.
So I guess I would have spaced 24 inches away.
Yeah.
I'm over measuring that actually. And Shadow Sun, I can't remember. I think she went to the middle so she could be more flexible. It looks something like this.
So basically, you pulled away here to stop the easy charge getting onto your home field, so he's not giving him multiplayer to charge. And you just said to him, "Well, you got an 11-inch charge to these crisis suits, or you've got this Pathfinder unit. That's it."
Yes, exactly.
And was the Devilfish empty?
The Devilfish had Darkstrider in it.
Yeah.
Still, and Darkstrider. I was gonna throw Darkstrider out to fill the screen here, but I figured I'd rather just have him do an action. To be honest.
Exactly.
And that I mean, he got me 15 points, so that was worth it. So at this point, the game obviously conceptually looks even, and so the tragedy, if there was one, is that I left this Devilfish charge. He took a risk with this Devilfish charge and went for it, which was a little bit unfortunate. What I probably should have done is pull this Devilfish back to make this as little as possible. But anyway, so it's not exactly obvious where it goes, which is the problem I had. But I was thinking it's a second screen in theory. So Mani had to. So I guess in context of timing, what essentially happened was all of this stuff in the middle chart. So the 5-man unit here, or whatever it is, ended up going this way, and they just chilled there. I think they charged the Pathfinders and piled in.
Yeah.
Something like this. This Trajan unit charged the Pathfinders, ate them, and then one of the units in here also charged the Pathfinders and ate them. So he triple charged my Pathfinders, which I expected. And he says there was a chunk at the table, and he was like, "Do I charge the Crisis team or do I not?" And he was like, "You know what? I wouldn't be Mani Cheema if I didn't." So he took the charge on the Crisis suits. He failed the charge. God bless. But it looked something like this, and then this Custodian Guard unit that's in your home field here is actually here eating them. So it ended up being what was an 11-inch charge, but he failed it.
Yeah.
God bless. Admittedly, Ornvar was slightly too far forwards. What I hadn't done, it was actually a shorter charge into Ornvar, which was just a slight error. But anyway, he didn't make the charge, thank God. And then this melee unit that's in his home field objective is actually slammed in the center here, charging the Pathfinders. So the Pathfinders all died, obviously. I'll just delete them because they all died. And then he ended up consolidating, and it looked something like... I can't pick up these units here. But they all ended up here. This unit was here, and this unit was here. So this is how it looked, really. The only difference is that this unit that's here made the charge into the fish.
Oh, God.
Without advance and charging. It was 11-inch charge. In fact, I'm measuring it now. It killed the fish and piled onto my home field. Which I have to say to you, really pissed me off.
Yeah.
So it charged the fish died. The Dark Strider, God bless him, came out here where I couldn't pile in. I'd already pre-measured the pile in. And this is almost exactly how it looked, yeah. And this unit was the unit with the reactive move. I'm guessing it was actually this way around.
Yeah.
And of course, that is probably the worst possible outcome for me, because a reactive move with these tight angles was disgusting. And I was like, well, crap. So it went to my turn. I drew Capture Enemy Outpost and Overwhelming Force. And I really heavily deliberated on an idea, which I'll share with you. So the idea was move the Crisis 18 inches this way, strike and fade onto their home field objective. Pull this entire unit back and release some of the charge. The problem with this is, the problem is this unit going back to pick up the Crisis suits is actually not a problem. And I then still lose all of these units without screening because this unit will pick that unit up. And I thought what would be a better plan is I create a lovely line of screens here. This was my plan. Create a beautiful line of screens, shield my Crisis suits behind it, shoot with the Crisis suits, strike and fade my XV8 commander onto their home field objective, so I still get the 8 points for capture, and I'm holding 5 points for the rest of the game, which brings me to my ambition of 80, and hit him as hard as I can. That was like the dream. We're only in turn 2 here, so it's not great. So what happened was I wanted to see if I could screen this, so I advanced Ornvar, which was the game-losing move, which I'll explain later. But I rolled a 5, he ended up getting 11, and he ended up being like this or something like this. I can't remember exactly how it was, but something. I think one of them was on there, and then those two were like this.
Yeah.
I brought out the. I'm trying to find a photo.
Stealth.
Let me just find. Yeah, I brought out the Tetras. They're here, screening. The stealth suits actually stayed hidden because I really wanted them to do an action, but they peeked their butt out here to get re-roll whatevers. One Riptide came to here to shoot down an angle. I think I wanted to pick up these 4 guards was my ambition, because they're on an objective. That's another few points, and it kills a unit. And obviously he doesn't have many activations with his army. He doesn't have many units. He's gone deployed. And then this Riptide, and then over here is a bit of a mess. So I knew he could reactive move, and I honestly was really not looking forward to it. So I advanced this Breacher unit, and I rolled a 6, which was delightful. So I moved them 12 inches and basically created a line around here. My ambition here was this unit has 2 things it can shoot, both of which are on an objective. So at least I get some value, and then we'll see where he reactive moves. So he did the kind of obvious play, I guess, and he reactive moved this unit into there.
Yeah.
And what he did was he made it so this Riptide wouldn't have an angle. They were tight enough into that corner on the upper floors. So A little bit sad. Shadow Sun then came out. The breaches inside this devilfish came out, and Riptide was about here.
Yeah.
And this breacher unit obviously is now just basically redundancy shooting into that. Darkstrider, God bless him, ran into this building and hid. Because I just used him for actions later, because I thought, who the hell's going to kill a 2 wound? He took a mortal wound, of course he did. But the 2 wound Darkstrider. And my Crisis Suit cut this angle as best they could. So I measured the angle, and it was like this, and I basically put them all in this box.
Yeah.
With the Cold Star at the back, and these guys, just something like this, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't remember how long the charge was. I knew it was trivial because he could advance the charge, so I didn't care about the distance. So I went to so this was this really, and I brought the Cold Star down, sorry. I decided not to bring down the broadsides. I didn't bring down the broadsides. Manny was actually really kind about this. He was like, you absolutely can to try and deal with them, but it frees up this unit to charge, because then I know that you aren't coming onto here. Whereas if I know you can take this off me, I cannot move this unit until your broadsides are in. And I was like, that's actually valid, and I kind of I tried to figure out how much I would kill this unit here without broadsides, and I kind of just didn't put broadsides on. I wanted sort of like that flexibility of reacting to what was dead. It turns out not much, Kyle, was dead after I shot my entire army. So the start of the shooting phase, he activated 4 up Feel No Pains on every unit he had, and then he put -1 damage on this one.
Yeah.
And basically the outcome of my shooting was that the sisters were all dead, and I strike and faded him, which was lovely. I did, in the end, pick up the 4 guys in the middle, thanks to the final Seeker missile from the Devilfish,
Nice.
who was, I think, positioned here, actually, so you can see.
Yeah.
I killed 3 of this unit, which was tragic. I honestly thought I would at least kill some more, but I think I killed 3 guys. And I think I killed like 3 guys of the unit on my home field objective, something like that. The grenade strap did 3 wounds, and then the entire breacher unit did 0. Like, I mean, it's just grim. As you'll see, one of the weaknesses of my list here is there's only one. Well, the breachers and the tetras are the only units that take cover off when they spawn.
Yeah.
So that was pretty rough. Like, I had to sort of like try and figure that out. But coordinate to engage is actually quite useful there, because you could coordinate to engage one way or the other. But anyway, so this was kind of the outcome, and I realized where I lost the game, which is Ornvar not charging them.
Yes.
I woke up like 2 nights ago at like 11:30 p.m. and I was like, wait, if Ornvar had charged, I win the game. And the reason is that Ornvar is actually not screening anything now. He's not screening this charge, obviously, and he is screening this, but these guys are sufficient. So therefore, this screen in this angle is irrelevant, and that's basically where I lost the game. But it goes to his turn, and it's bleak. So I will delete the units that died.
Sure.
Which is Riptides, Tetras, 5 Crisis Suits, 2 of the Ethereal Bodyguards, that entire Breacher unit except 1 guy. God bless him, by the way. He also got me like 8 points. And then I can't remember what his unit in the middle did. I won't lie to you. I think he battered this Riptide with them or something. I'm not exactly sure because they're not. Oh yeah, no, I can't remember exactly what happened to this unit, what they did. I think they may have eaten something. I can't remember it, to be honest with you. That Riptide, that Devilfish is still alive and did good. But this melee unit here is in my face. This Trajan unit is here, basically, like piled onto this objective, and this whole unit is now here.
Right.
Which is just like this is kind of how it ends up looking at the start of my turn 3. It's something like this. I can't remember exactly how we got to this exact position, but it looks something like this, and. I think he may have actually strung. Yeah, the Trajan unit is what's holding 2 here. That's why I think actually that's Trajan's unit. But anyway, where's Trajan gone?
He's
I
somewhere.
can't find Trajan. Where's Trajan? Oh, he's here. Oops. This is the Blade Captain, and that's Trajan. But anyway, yes, doesn't matter. It's all for the same So at this point, obviously he had no feel, no pain left, and I figured this is the counterpunch. Like, this is the ungodly counterpunch that I have to do. I was farming points on this objective here.
Yeah.
Which was nice. I was holding this. Like, lovely. God bless the Crisis Commander having a gun drone so he could do investigate signals, by the way. That was very helpful. But anyway, so, yeah, it feels really grim. But Mani was like, I thought from this point I looked like I'd lost the game, honestly. Like, I thought it was just over. But I actually hadn't shot. So I bring in my broadsides down here, and then I essentially kind of leave everything where it is. I think the Devilfish ends up being over here or something. I kind of moved some things around. This Breacher goes onto that objective to do cleanse or something ungodly like that. I think I got extend battle lines, actually. But, oh yeah, I got extend battle lines because these stealth suits also sprinted forward. And I needed to hold 2 in no man's land, something like that. But I then shot back my entire army, and I did not kill enough. So that was kind of what happened there, really.
So it's interesting to see that even though you lost a lot of pieces,
yeah,
the key moves that kept you in the game, I suppose, was the commander farming points and getting capturing the outpost, Dark Strider being left untouched, and then these little pieces to go and do those secondaries and get those points.
Yes. Yeah, as well as big OC on my home field objective, it's probably worth noting.
Yeah.
Like still having 20 breaches, and then Riptide being 4, Tetris being 2. You know,
yeah.
Those kind of things happened. Yeah. So I think I killed a number of things. The Blade Champion here was left on 2 wounds, or 3 wounds, and then I think I killed, like, say, 2 Wardens here or something like that, which just wasn't enough. So I needed this shooting to go really, really well to, like, recover the situation, but it just didn't. And then what was really interesting, and this is something that I hadn't done, is Mani went, "You're really close to winning this game." And I was like, "Nah, bro. Like, I'm just, I was like, nah, I'm not." And he was like, "No, you are." And he explained it to me. It was actually wicked. He was like, he hadn't done deploy twice in turn 2 and 3 to get charges off, so he was 9 points down in secondaries. And he said, "And I can never take you off 5 in primary because you'll hold this home and you'll burn it for an extra 5. So he was like, "Yeah, so I need to sit down." So he sat down for like 10 minutes and figured out how to win the game, which I was like, holy. In my head, I was like, I've won the moral battle here. Like, this is wicked. So yeah, he had a plan. One plan was he could burn this objective with this big unit and hope I don't kill it to get the 10 points and then just beat me on primary. But he said it's a coin flip. If I kill that unit, he just loses the game. He said something like, "I either win by 5 or lose by 1 on this play." And then he sort of figured out like a good enough play, which was this Blade Champion being alive on 4 wounds got him deployed for 4.
Yeah.
And the game was lost by 6, so that was really sad for me. But yeah, so from this position, he took a kind of like relatively low risk play. The Blade Champion obviously picked up the Cold Star. Trajan peeked out here. They shot and killed the remaining wounds of the Riptide and Fish that picked them up. And then they charged the stealth suits to deny me 5 primary, which again was just like sort of textbook. So that kind of ended up killing the stealth suits and moving this unit onto their-ish. The Blade Champion stood still for deploy, so I couldn't overwatch it. And then this unit charged the Breachers and failed their photon grenade battle shock test, which was absolutely massive.
That was huge.
Yeah, so the game was massive. Yeah, because what he then did was Shadow Sun was here. I can't remember exactly where they were. But Shadow Sun was here, and he put the Blade Champion into Shadow Sun. I think he actually only had like 2 guys left. Yeah. He put the Blade Champion into Shadow Sun. I realize there's 2 Blade Champions here, but the Blade Champion is Shadow Sun, and the 2 guys into the remaining number of creatures. And he killed them to the man, and the damage into Shadow Sun was Dev Wounds, so I didn't even get my 5-up invuln, which I would have CP rerolled and tried to survive. So that was a 5-point swing, and kind of buried the game at that point.
Yeah.
Because he burned this objective later, and it just kind of snowballed. I've kind of conflated turn 4 and 5 here a bit, but hopefully, like, you can kind of see how it's gone.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Basically, you burned his home field. He burned this one here.
Lands. Yeah, I think it was one of these 2. I think this unit was basically strung out, so he could burn whichever one he wanted.
So that one was burned, and then you burned
something
his.
Like this.
Yeah.
All past dead. So, yeah, and with the death of Shadow Sun and the Breachers, I had the Tetras and the Broadsides left, as well as my lone Breacher and my Dark Strider. I think actually the Breacher had died at this point. I think he pulled these guys out to kill them. But yeah, so I needed to make this primary. I needed to hold this primary for another 5 points and draw something good. And I ended up drawing Cleanse and Area Denial.
Right.
And Dark Strider advanced back to the middle to get Area Denial, and then I realized because he ended up being over here for Investigate Signals reasons. But he ended up being able to get this objective for Cleanse and Area Denial in the same move.
Nice.
Which got me like 8 points, which is why it was kind of like low-key so close. But had I held this home objective, it would have been a 1-point difference. And looking at the secondaries I had left, there's like half of them that if I'd drawn, I would have won. So if I'd drawn Assassinate, my broadsides would have killed the 3-wound Blade Champion, for example, and I would have won the game. Had I drawn, I think I still had no prisoners, and I'd shot the Blade Champion and this unit, I would have killed 4 points, which would have been a draw. And stuff. So it was, yeah, it was a lot. But actually, that would have been a win there if I'd held the front. But yeah, so obviously that would have been lovely. I don't think Shadow Sun statistically survives against the Blade Champion, who's re-rolling wounds. But with a CP reroll, it's damn close.
It depends on your CP as well, because you could pop stims. But it all depends on your CP. But in terms of what you've described with this game, it's a perfect example of you had a big turn, you lost a lot of stuff, things happened that obviously you've analysed it afterwards and gone, if I'd just moved this Devilfish back, it wouldn't have been so close. But what is demonstrated to me just from listening to you talk about it is that at no point, despite the losses that you received, was the game completely out of the possibility of you winning.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And it's a really important lesson that sometimes bad stuff can happen to you, but it's important not to get tilted and always to analyse the board state, which obviously you'd done. You'd spotted an opportunity for Capture on the Outpost because he pushed forward. You were able to go into his backlines. Your Dark Strider, little assets that can get you points. And then Mani's obviously taken a step away from the game, analysed it for 10 minutes, which is a Mani thing to do, and go, what are my win conditions? And then he'd obviously knew that the game was on a fractured hairline of winning or losing. So from both players' perspective, you had to be on top of your game because at any given point it could swing. Hence why the game was so close. You said there was options to be a draw, options for it to be a win on you, or then at the end of the day it was only a 6-point differential. So that game in itself was of high caliber play and super tight at any given moment. And it's easy for you to analyse it afterwards, but in game you still had your head in the game and you were like, no, right, points win the game. And I'm really, really proud that game was so close. And even though obviously it ended your win streak, but then the next one you went on to play, was it Nids?
Nids.
And
without Purge the Foe this time.
Without Purge the Foe, but you got the experience into Nids, and you won that game, was it 95 to his?
74, yeah.
So not only did you achieve your 4-1, but you actually had a really good game of 40k from a challenging your competitive nature and your everything you've been working towards by playing one of the top players in the world. In fact, let's give him credit where credit's due, the top player in the world based off last ITC. And if I were in your position, I'd be extremely proud of the performance you did. And obviously, you've taken away a few things that you could always improve on, which is also good to analyse the game and think, well, what's my next stage of improvement? What could I have done differently? How could I avoid making these mistakes again? And I'm no doubt you'll be taking these learnings to your next tournament, and your next tournament is Southampton?
South Coast.
Sorry.
Yeah, Southampton.
Yeah, Southampton.
It's not this weekend, but next.
Yeah. So honestly, buddy, we were all rooting for you in the Discord, and I know that you felt the love, and I know I was messaging you, be like, "What the hell, bro? Like 300 points," and you finished 5th. So that is the highest. Well, let's. You're basically the top performer at the moment, right? And I want you to keep it that way. I want you to push. And 5th at a major in the UK is something to be proud of, and that is going to be your staple now going forward. And you've set the bar high, mate. And you've even I was. No, honestly, this is like. No ego. I literally was sat there and I was like, oh, I'm trying to design lists. I'm feeling a bit fatigued from LVO, and I was like, oh, next event. And then as soon as I saw you smashing, I was like, right, that's it. I'm coming in to join my boy Will, and we're gonna rep it.
Yeah,
so
bro.
honestly, mate, you fired up the entire Discord, and you fired myself up, and I cannot wait to see what you do in other events. And honestly, mate, it's a pleasure to have you on board, and I think you absolutely smashed it out of the park. And like I said before, proud of you, man. So we have got a lot of questions for you.
Oh boy!
And we're going to jump into our Discord, where our loving community has got lots of questions for you. So we'll kick it off with, oh my god, there's more. 94 messages since 20. Okay, so I tell you what,
I'm free. I can answer questions.
So we have got. Apologies if we don't get chance to answer them all, but we're kind of going to go through a few of them. So the first one was, I would love to hear about his views on the changes of the meta post data slate. What challenges has he experienced, and what changes he would make to his own list going forward? And that's by Icefox. So cool. What challenges have you faced since the balanced data slate?
I guess it's the same challenge that everyone's faced. I haven't played against much indirect yet, but that will be terrifying. But I spoke to Mani about the indirect lists, for example, and stuff after the game, and I think my list would really have struggled into, say, David Gaillard's list. I just don't think I would have had legs into it, to be honest with you. It's not like a guaranteed loss or anything, I just think that would have been rough. The low knots would help. I'd probably have to start the crisis suits off the board, but that would be tough. Catan, like having done the numbers, if you go full Cyclics on Crisis and you don't overcharge, of course, but that's really helpful. But Necrons are very tricksy, and that's tough, just because they've got a lot of options with teleporting or hands just being like borderline unkillable. That if you like overcommit to them, and it's just really there's nothing else in the game that we don't one shot, so it's playing around that. But again, they're really easy to screen. You can just surround them. They're very, very slow. I would say with the prevalence of Custodes and Grey Knights being strong, like the 2+ armor save is rough. It's something I like about Riptides is that like that profile actually kills Custodians very nicely.
It does.
It also deals with Nemesis Dread Knights very nicely, and Grey Knight Terminators very nicely. Damage 4 is just beautiful with AP3 as well. So yeah, the second part of the question was what I changed about my list for that, and like nothing, I guess, in the sense that like that just because of the meta. Like there is the whole indirect question, which I don't really have an answer to. I'm kind of just hoping I won't play against it. I know it sounds a bit dumb, but like if I can deal with everything but guard, then maybe that's good enough. But yeah, having answers to some custodies with Riptides is really helpful.
I think they definitely fill that role quite nicely. Obviously, Holodiscus has asked, what incentivized you to take stealth suits over more conventional chaff options? What he's trying to get at here is that he feels that they're too fragile to do their job for more than one turn.
Yeah.
So, what was your thought process with taking that unit of stealth?
Yeah, I mean, so my list doesn't have very good spotting units. I don't have 3 Tetra units. I don't have 2 Pathfinders or 2 Tetras. I have 2 Tetras, but I don't have like that much. So they fill that gap, which is very convenient. How I use stealth suits usually is I will, on like turn 2 or 3, I will poke one of the guns out to spot for a Riptide. Keep them relatively like 8 inches from the center, or 8 inches, or a nice advance, or like a short advance, away from an objective that I would want, and they act as that. So they're in a really nice stage position. They poke their gun out. They give me some spotting. Not many opponents are willing to waste like an entire activation into 3 stealth suits, and their profile is good enough to survive a couple of like random heavy bolters, right? With stealth, 3 up save, they'll get cover. So if a whole castigator or something like a predator, or not really predators, but hits a stealth team, I'm not so sad about that, because but my rest of my army is exposed. My Riptides are already exposed. My broadsides will be exposed, so no one's shooting them turn 2, and then I'll pretty much save them for leaping out, doing an action, and in that turn spotting, and they provide me with better spotting than like Crook Carnivores would do for the same points. Obviously, Crook Carnivores can't spot, but like, yeah, they provide me with that. Obviously, I think if they had grenades or something, they would be insane, and they don't. But they also add an extra screen. They move 8 inches, which is really far, especially with advancing. So they kind of just leap forward. They do a good round of spotting, if not 2, and then do an action. And they're annoying to kill because a lot of my army exposes itself at the same time. I'll expose 2 Riptides, broadsides, fish, breachers, stealth team, everything, crisis units at once. No one's going to be shooting the stealth suits.
So another thing you mentioned, like poking out one guy with a gun. If they shoot you with 1 activation, you just remove that guy and then the unit's safe. Simple as that.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
We've got a lot of questions around Shadow Sun, so I know everyone's asking about how you use it. So rather than calling out everything, I think Zorro, Hollow Discus has asked the same kind of thing, which is like, did Shadow Sun have a dedicated role, or was she just a flex unit to do multiple things by utilizing Lone Op? What was her primary function that she offered over other options like solo commanders?
Yeah, of course. So I don't know if she is better than a solo commander or a unit of Pathfinders or another unit of Breachers. I wouldn't like die on that hill at all. But what she offered for me was great. So a little bit of CP generation, which is lovely when my army uses tons. It's not reliable, but it's something. It increased damage output in the early turns of my long range units in the form of reroll 1s, and also in the form of spotting, as she can expose herself and spot when I don't want other units to. I know she doesn't have a marker light, but whatever. Her movement is incredible for doing actions. A good example is like cleanse on an objective that you've just slammed 10 breaches onto. You do not want those breaches cleansing when they can shoot, and she'll just nip over and do that. And she'll be in a position where she's able to do that. So yeah, that's her use. She's able to be in some really dumb positions, which is lovely. And I mean, her shooting isn't amazing, but she one-shot an Exocrine, which was funny, from full HP. But for me, she's very flexible, which is amazing. She can expose herself. She can be out there. She can leap into a corner to do signals and not die for it. She can reroll 1s to Breachers, which is amazing, to Riptides, which is amazing. She can throw herself out there to spot with Lone Up. I'm not, as I said, not going to die on the hill. Probably, you could find other units that do a very similar thing. Well, not necessarily a similar thing, but like you could get another unit that has very big value as well. But for me, it was very, very helpful. She barely died. I think she died once in the Mani game. She generated quite a lot of points and improved my damage output of units every single turn. Every single turn, my unit shot in her range. I never missed that, which meant that throughout the course of the game, my damage output was going up by reroll 1s on at least 1 unit, usually 2. That has value.
I think the other thing that adds value as well is when you're thinking about primary control, is that there's a couple of ways that I like to look at scoring primary. And we all know that if you put 1 unit on an objective, it gets removed. Okay? And then it's a simple solution for an opponent to then, solve, or a problem easy. They just go, cool, kill that unit. That denies you primary. If you then put a unit, like a infantry unit, and then also a tank, and then also a lone op, you're able to actually go, well, there's 3 problems for you to solve, and even if you kill problem A and problem B, you still got a load up that you can't interact with. So she can fill that role very well, just to double down. And sometimes if you go first, you can just put her on an objective and go, well, guess what, I'm on it, and then you've got no threat range, just come to me, and that's an easy 5 points. So she's very good at that, and she can also benefit from Fire and Fade as well. So she can be a really useful tool to help guarantee you points, secondaries, reliable spotting, and fusions are cute, right? And so is her ability to potentially get CP back. It's cute. If it pays off, it pays off. If it doesn't, oh well. It's not like you're basing your plan around it.
I pair her with a Riptide and Breaches. So what will happen is the Breaches will go out on the objective, and I'll put Shadow Sun on as well, so that the unit that charges the Breaches, if they get battle shocked, and even if they pick up the Breaches, I still hold it, because they're battle shocked. So it's stuff like that that's really helpful. And then when the Breaches use grenades, there's a chance I get the CP back. When they, photon grenades, there's a chance I get the CP back. Stuff like that. But she usually goes after, so the Devilfish Breaches will go first, Devilfish will die, Breaches will come out, Shadow Sun will come forward with the Riptide, and I have a nice little buffed piece hitting back. That's the thing, yeah.
Well, Zorro has asked like 10 questions, but I think
we can go through his fast if we want.
I think a lot of them have been answered. Obviously, he's put Will is still coming in with the Crisis Brick. How does it feel with the unit? In what matchup was it great? And in which something else could have been... Sorry, basically, which matchup did it do well in? And which ones could you have had something else instead of it?
Okay. So... It underperformed against Custodes. Surprise, surprise. The -1 damage basically makes it redundant, to be honest. There's not much to say there. Into Tyranids, it was a monster. Being able to split fire into 18 shots into one thing, and then firing plasmas into another Tyranid with, say, no invuln. Was just amazing. I was just, 5-up saves on random Exocrines or whatever was great. So that was wonderful, and I never got charged. I never let it get tagged. So that's lovely. Into Sisters, it's pretty redundant. There's very few units that Sisters can run where you want an entire 6-man brick to kill it. Even Arcos, you can pretty much do it with 3. But it's in those games where I'm happy to use Tetras more aggressively, because I know I don't need the rerolls for my Crisis team. And then that Crisis team just sort of will split fire every time, pick up random stuff, and just be an absolute body. So, yeah, I like playing with it. I guess I discussed it at the beginning. I know it's not something we're all relying on now, but it felt good to play. I will take it to the next one, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know how essential it is, but there are just times with 10-man Terminator bricks that Grey Knights run that you just wished you had a 6-man Crisis brick.
Yeah.
And you're so grateful you do. So
I think it's one of those ones where it's the good old reliable that you either just stick with your guns and go, you know what, I'm practiced with it, I know how to use it, I need that assurance in my list that I've got this one thing that people are still going to fear, I know how to use it, it's going in my list. And then the experimental stages, yes, you could have solo commanders doing the same thing, or more Riptides, but you've kind of gone from, no, I have this balanced list that I've been practicing with, I'm going to use it because I know how to use it, and I'm going to be comfortable in whatever the round pairings throw my way. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it all comes down to player preference, and I certainly still see the need for it, but I can also see the need to just go away from it, and which is something I've been experimenting within our Discord with all the random lists that I'm coming up with. But at the end of the day, if you like it and you're profound with it, then keep using it. If you want a better change. There's no right or wrong answer. The other questions, I think, were all based around how did it feel playing versus such a big name as Mani?
Yeah.
I mean, you've kind of gone through that a little bit, but would you like to expand on it anymore?
It was cool. It was cool just to be there. The top tables, the judges kept watching our games because that's their responsibility, and they said if you're undefeated, you have to be on a clock. And I was like, oh, cool! I'm in the top tables thing, and being surrounded by people I'd sort of heard of or heard the voices of. So that felt good. Yeah, I think once if I had been bodied, I would have been like, yeah, fair enough. That's yeah, okay. I looked at the sun and it burned my eyes. But the game being that close, like I was on the table behind Mani's table for the last game, and he was chatting to Vic about our game, and like I was like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that like, because Manny was like, yeah, Jesus, I nearly lost or something, and like Vic was like, what? And that felt good, yeah. Like, because then I was, so I think I was nervous in the sense that like I had, I wanted to get my points, and I don't know. There's no shame in being destroyed, but like I would have been nice to have not. And like, yeah, it's kind of like that what if question. Like, Danny was like, yeah, you probably will lose, but what if you don't? And I was like, oh, what if I didn't?
Well,
Like, can you
thing.
imagine?
I mean,
this conversation was I beat him.
I mean, obviously, yeah. We're typically British. We're not going to be like, oh yeah, but I can say on your behalf that you were the underdog, and being able to go in there and be like, yeah, you may be this big bulldog that everyone's frightened, but I'm a motherfucking chihuahua, and I'm going to bite you for every point. Like, it's that thing where
which is how it felt, actually.
You've played your heart out. You've actually got a performance that you are super happy with, even up until that point of that loss, and you still played the game, and you are a perfect example of never underestimate anybody that you play. Because there are players out there, I mentioned it before, there's like players like Matt Laura who went to his first ever tournament, which was LVO, and came second, and then did it again this year and came first. It's treating that player across from you at the same respect as you would do with these, star players, if you will, or these well-known big names, and you did that. And Manny was like, talking like, man, I nearly lost, and talking to Vic VJ, and you're there going, there going, oh, sweet, like these names are talking.
Yeah.
But no, that's cool, man. And I think the other questions he's got is like the list changing, which has already been answered. Oh, and he just wanted to say he wanted to empathise on how happy he is for you and seeing you achieve such a result.
Yeah, he's been very helpful. We had some good deployment discussions as well, like before, for help with prep and stuff. So yeah, thanks to Zoro a lot. Yeah.
I'll keep one question short and sweet, just like Tez the tiger shark. What's your favourite colour, and why no tiger shark?
Black. My favourite colour is black, or like a deep purple. Big fan. And tiger sharks are wicked. I don't own one, but yeah, I think they're awesome. I just don't think I have a place in my army for 300 points. Whatever it is, like if it had hover, like if it could be on the battlefield turn 1.
And also, Tez, you are the tiger shark king. That's your role, mate. Let's not cramp on each other's style. You do the tiger shark thing, and we leave you doing your thing, and then you leave it at a super major, and I have to let you know that you've left it there. Oh man. The other questions are, I like these questions. So we've got one from Citizen Bob, and he's and I had to even look at what this bloody question meant, but it's like, how often have you felt plateaued as a player? How do you break away from it?
Well, so I used to compete in League of Legends, which has helped with understanding like what plateaus are or aren't. So relating to Warhammer, I've only been playing for a short period of time, so I've never felt like I'm yet to feel like I've hit a plateau. Like I've just grown, like from just 3-2ing like every super major to 1-2-3, which was depressing, to winning RTTs, and then finally like my 4-1. So I feel like I'm just on an upward trajectory, and I'll let you know when I plateau. But I've plateaued in other things, obviously. We all have, or hopefully people who push themselves do. So I guess like to break away from it, you need to change what it is you're doing. The biggest thing that I think people do, and obviously not relating to Citizen Bob, as I've never played him, but they will not critically look at what happened in the game. And it's so easy to play a game of Warhammer with beers, without beers, whatever, and then after the game to like kind of relatively flippantly go, oh yeah, I threw this unit away, oh yeah, the dice won't go for me here, oh yeah, whatever, and then move on. And you will learn, like, I don't know, some things from that game, but you will learn very little compared to what would happen if you sat down with pen and paper and wrote the game out. Write the game out, or look at the photos, or say, what if this, or what if this, or what if this, and like use it as a thought experiment. So me and my friend Johnny, for example, will play, and then we'll go, what if perfect dice? Like, what happens in this turn if every dice is perfect? What happens? Or what happens if worst dice, and vice versa? Or what if perfectly average dice, as an example? Or you could go, what if I deployed differently? Or what if this was this, and so on. And I think that's, I think if you're finding that you're plateauing, like critically examine the game you play. Go in with the mindset of, I'm going to play what I can, take photos of every turn from every phase, but like every turn, write what happens, write it up to yourself, and then actually examine it. Say, did I make the right choice? Oh, I got charged here. How far was the charge? Okay, it was a 12-inch charge. Fair enough. Okay, I gave an 8-inch charge. Could I have made it 9? I could have made it 9 because I was lazy on the objective. Then never be lazy again. Put yourself on the tip of that objective, and and stuff like that. So that would be my advice, really. And there will be a point, there will be a plateau for like everyone, pretty much. Very few people are uncapable. You're talking like world champion level of whatever it is. So you will be able to be, way better than whoever you are. The likeliness is you'll be able to be way better than you are. You just need to figure out what it means to improve.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it perfectly myself, and I think for me though, I probably plateaued once, and that was probably like 7 years ago. And I'll tell you why only once. It's when I stopped putting an expectation of going for 4-1 or 5-0, because I realised that the game in itself, unless you're scoring 100 every single game at every event, you can always improve. So for me, it was the mindset change of, I've told this story before, and for the listeners listening to YouTube, I won't say it again in detail, but when I had the mind block of breaking that 3-2 and getting into the 4-1, it was the change in behaviours of looking at how I can control my scoring, what are the other players in front of me doing that I am not, and then started to focus from that trajectory on just how do I improve my behaviours in the game. And I'm constantly evolving with the meta around me and constantly looking for solutions within consistent problems that are always being thrown our way in this game, because it's ever evolving, it's always fluid, and it's not stagnant like it was in the years gone by. It's a lot more of a fluid, enjoyable game in my opinion. And I think when you stop thinking I need to break this bracket that I'm in, and you just think actually focus on the basics and the fundamentals, you no longer plateau, because you're always a forever optimist. And that's probably one of my biggest strengths and weaknesses, that I'm forever an optimist. I will never say, no, this can't be done, or I cannot do this. And, to give an example, when I went to LVO, I was preparing all my packs, and I even stopped at round 6 and thought, there's no point doing the quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals. Yeah. And I thought, no, why am I doing this? What the hell am I doing? No, prepare for it all. And I did. And that's a perfect example of not plateauing myself and actually opening up the opportunities to potentially go further than I expect. And I think there's an element of, with what you've done, you wanted to go in with the expectation of 4-1, but then you played your heart and you got it. And now it's what's next. And it's how do you approach that? Do you then push yourself to go 5-0, or do you just think, actually, like you said perfectly, I'm just going to learn from these mistakes of not to do them and focus on that, and that will get me the outcome that I desire, whatever that may be. Whether you're going for top tower in the UK or whatever it may be, whatever that is, you can break it down from your learnings and what you're learning in every single game. So I think that's the right way to do it. And if anybody out there is trying to do similar to break that 3-2 going 4-1 like Will did, then think behaviours, not outcome, and the outcome will look after itself if you get your behaviours right.
I'd just add as well, I don't want to talk about this necessarily for too long, but there's like techniques you can do, right? So like you could write up every game on an Excel spreadsheet, just like one sentence, one learning, just one. Like it could just be, I don't know, remember to measure charges or something, whatever it is. Don't waste CP. Don't CP reroll that thing that you don't need to. But if you compound those, it will just exponentially grow. And get a practice partner, be like, hey man, can we play a game? And then at turn 3, write down how we think the game's going to go, and then play the game out. Like take a 20-minute pause, have a cup of tea, play, and then are you happy to get to turn 2 and then redraft, go back to deployment and redo it all again because we screwed up? Get someone who will learn with you. All those sort of things will really help. And they're really rewarding. I see people make the same mistakes at RTTs that I play at. They make the same mistake every game, and I'm like, okay, like fair enough, but don't complain. So yeah.
And I think the other questions, with us having a natural conversation about this, have kind of answered, but like we've got like questions from Slugs, who's put, what specific areas have you focused on and worked to improve in your game over the last 9 months?
Yeah, so 9 months is long. I'll do it in 10th because 10th is new. I think 9 months comes to the end of 9th, and it would be, actually it doesn't really, does it? To be fair, it's like the last. So, so I have a personal ambition, which was have played against or as every army in the game. I cannot stand going to a tournament and drawing an army I haven't played and losing because of it. It pisses me off to no end. I can't tell you. So just play against or play as every army in the game. That's critical. There's 2 armies. I think Dark Eldar, Drakari are the only army I've not played against yet. And I was really worried going into this event that I would pair against them because I just knew if I had. And that's 27 games, right? I mean, that's 1 game against each army, and it's like 28. So play against every army was a big one. Planning for secondaries, like a turn in advance, is huge. So everyone does it with investigate signals now. It's like a habit.
Yeah.
But a really good example of this is area denial and deploy teleport homers are not the same range. Area denial is wholly within 6, and deploy teleport homers is in 6.
Yeah.
Wholly and not wholly. So what I would do is I'd put on VAR 11.5 inches from the center with excess movement and not care, and think it's okay if I get deploy, it's fine. But if I get area denial, it is not fine.
No.
So planning for secondaries, and then a further planning for like what unit is going to be the next unit to move on to this objective would really help. But those are the things. And then playing against and understanding what every army is at least trying to do and what some of their key units do is really helpful. Like the first time Morven Val's Paragon Warsuits hit you, you'll be like, wait, what? That's insane. 6 melter shots, re-rolling hits and wounds with miracle dice. Like you will lose a unit and then you'll never let it happen again. But so those things really. And then I guess I mentioned everything else. Pre-measuring, pre-lining up, playing with intent, getting used to it, not being lazy with little things. It's like when you arbitrarily walk onto an objective to make it's like making sure you're within 18-inch range. Do you want to be within 18 inches range, or do you want to be at the cusp of 18 inches, or do you actually want to be as close as possible anywhere in between? Because that charge distance, what people forget is 0.1 of an inch in a model movement is a difference between an 8 or a 9-inch charge sometimes, right? So you could just say to your opponent, by the way, I'm actually going to shimmy half, like fraction of an inch back to make this charge 1 inch more. And it's something I only picked up recently, but it's like absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. I've won games because that charge has then been rolled 1 inch too low. And I was like, moving back 0.1 of an inch was actually great. Like, I am now 17 inches from you and not 16 inches from you. And they go, okay, lovely. So that's huge, that sort of stuff. But
and I think
that's some of the specific things I do.
I think obviously that's kind of broadly, and apologies guys if I've not read out your question, but we'll go through it in the Discord and answer it. But a lot of them have, like Patrick said, like interesting how you think through deployment and particularly what you did with Shadowsun. But we've and Shadowsun and Stealth Suits. We've kind of answered the Shadowsun and Stealth Suits. But are there any kind of key things that you think about through deployment? You've already mentioned planning out your secondaries, getting into positions, firing angles, and I can't really see what else there could be added to that, but I don't know if you've got a different perspective and you maybe have something.
I don't think so. The only thing I would say, and I struggle with this, and it helped talking to Zoro before this tournament, I guess, but have a plan at least, like as far as you can go. So like plan maybe turn 2. Maybe just think where do I want my models to be turn 2?
Yeah.
Or therefore, where do they have to be turn 1? I would say start there. That's where I am at. I don't plan into turn 3 and 4. I won't pretend I'm some like chess genius. I'm not Magnus Carlsen, but I plan turn 2. I plan where I know if I go first where every unit will be. I know if I go second where every unit will be, with like a couple of variables, which defines my deployment. And it's way harder at an RTT where the terrain's random. Way harder, really hard. But I'm trusting my opponent's going to struggle with that as well. But at UKTC terrain, when it's pre-measured, you can absolutely practice this. There's no excuse to not put your models down on the table and go, where do I want this fish to have gone to? And when you watch a good player play, they will be like, cool, this unit is going to go there because I know the range already. I'm not even going to measure. And you're like, oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's...
And I think you've got one last question that we'll go through, which is in like a 2-part section. He's added to it, and it's from our local hero, Black Goodbye, who pretty much is our rules guru plus the helper of me and the Discord, making sure it doesn't look like a Discord from Wish. So he has said, when approaching a match, what is your process of analysis of the opponent's list, the table, etc., and what indicators do you check for to inform your strategy?
I mean, it's definitely not as good an answer as everyone else, like you might hope. I mean, like, I still feel really quite bad at this. Like, really, really not good. But I guess, like, the key things would be, like, knowing the threat ranges of everything in the list. And I'm pretty good at memorizing them once they've told me them once. But I will ask that question like 1,000 times. You have no idea how annoying it must be. But like I will be like, what's the threat range of this? Anything can reactive move. Every movement phase can anything reactive move. No, I told you, nothing in my list can reactive move. Okay, I'll probably stop asking you by turn 4. I'm like so anal with it, it's unreal. But it locks opponents out. So that's one thing. So find all of that stuff out, all the gimmicks and the threat ranges, and then understand what the threat actually does to you. So I guess this is experience, and I'm not pretending like I'm some experienced wizard, but like, for example, knowing that an exocrine statistically doesn't one-shot up devilfish means you can hang your devilfish in the middle, knowing that only one, assuming you have cover, let's say, knowing that only one exocrine will hit it. And then asking yourself, like, if you do one-shot it, is that so bad, you know? But trying to figure that out, like what's good into what, is really helpful to then make it so they don't get what they're good at shooting at and you get what you're good at shooting at. So breachers eat toughness 3 things, obviously, for breakfast, but actually same with toughness 4 and 5, but not toughness 6. So like, where are the toughness 6 units going? Okay, maybe instead of that, I'm going to send Riptides into them, because toughness 6 things usually have more than 1 wound. Riptides with damage 2, 3, and 4 guns. So that sort of thing. And in terms of the table and stuff like that, I guess it's archetypal. Do they want to rush me? And if they want to rush me, then I can play back and slow. And if they are like don't have any shooting, then I can have units hanging out in Narnia, just taking random angles and knowing that threat. Very helpful. I think one of the key things, I guess we haven't really touched on this, but Mani did it with the points, and I learned a lot from watching Siegler play against, I think was it Jack Harpster? But he was against Blood Angels anyway, and he was 15 points to 55 at the start of turn 4 or bottom of turn 3. And I was like, Jesus, he's lost this game. He had in fact won that game. 40-point deficit at turn 3 is winnable. And understanding how he did that, I mean, I rewatched that game loads, and I was like, holy shit, I can learn so much from this. Because I would always fight a little bit for those points, and actually sometimes you just don't have to. And no, I mean, you do eventually, but understanding what needs to stay alive to win the game later on is huge, and how much you'll be able to pick up. So I think, the base strategy is there, you know, throw a devilfish or 2 forward, throw some pathfinders forward to screen, get some long range angles with the broadsides and the riptides, like do some chip damage, see what dies if you get lucky. But then I know the crisis suit's in a good position, but then it becomes a bit more fluid. But pretty much, I don't know. I guess to answer the question specifically, it's like I kind of do the same-ish thing every game, but into archetypes. So into a ranged matchup, I'll do the same thing regardless of the matchup. Into a melee matchup, I'll do the same thing regardless of which melee army it is, and I'll just respect like the ranges more. So World Eaters go further than Custodes do, for example. Orcs only go fast on 1 turn, you know, but transport, etc., etc. So but I'm not like, I don't know. I still feel like I'm pretty bad at the game and pretty like clueless about what my actual plan is. I couldn't sit down with you at the matchup and tell you what my plan is. I can't verbalize it at all like that. But I could deploy and do my turn 1 and then my turn 2 and go from
You're more of a, I suppose there is some planning, not to undersell yourself too much, mate. There is obviously some planning that goes in, but you are pretty much a reactive player in the moment. Right, okay,
yeah,
now I need to do, And I think there's lots
100%.
of jokes where I think even Black Goodbyes put, did you just go balls out with the same strats and force your will on them?
Force your will on them. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, it's really weird because it kind of felt like that. I was like, for example, in the Sisters game, I had, like, my deployment was identical, right? So I then was like, okay, I'll just pull my broadside back instead of forward, which means I can pick up the Rhino. And I did that to the Tyranid player and just exploded an Execrete, and I was like, that's a good angle. That's a good deployment for those broadsides, like twice in a row. And then I watched him be like, if I swing this Hive Tyrant forward to get on this objective, those broadsides can see it. And I was like,
yes,
I'm a genius. Like, what an accidentally perfect place to put them. So I'll put them there every game.
I think that's definitely a thing on UKTC, and something you can have a look on all maps is that, you know, I'm planning for Goonhammer coming up, and I'm looking at the angles, looking at the board state and the pre-planned terrain, and thinking, well, that position's perfect for said unit, or other units.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's the key thing where anybody that's playing on preset terrain, WTC, UKTC, GW Open, will be able to look at that and plan accordingly before you actually get to the table. Player placed, I've proven that you can still do that level of planning just through actually planning your player placed terrain. And I went with PAX and the LVO, and they were like, what the hell? What's this British guy doing playing out a black folder? And I was like, you'll see. And I'd prepared it all. And like, even the TOs were just like, huh? And I was like, look, it's what we do.
Well, it is formulaic, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Player placed terrain is formulaic. It's just slightly chaotic.
He's quite slightly chaotic, and there's plenty of variables that you got to factor in, like where they place theirs. But it's pretty easily signaled to, if they're a combat army, they're gonna want to set up the U to basically stage and come at you. If you're a shooting army, you will basically do the reverse and keep a big firing lane. It's not a difficult, problem to solve, but it's a little bit of a different planning than we do for UKTC, WTC, and GW Companion Pack. But I think we've answered quite a lot of questions, and I think to close up this, I think what I'd like to say, Will, is thanks very much for coming on and spending your evening with me. It's been a pleasure, and honestly, from us all at the Puretide Program and myself, super proud, and keep up the good work. And if you guys watching are interested in joining the Puretide Program, there will be the typical links below, and please like and subscribe and do all that jazz, because algorithms and YouTube. But for me, I'd love to get to know the community more. I'll be doing more of these videos on the YouTube channel in the next upcoming months, because we've got an exciting new codex on the way. But if you're wanting to take your game to the next level, improve your confidence, and get to really know how to play the army, I suppose consistently, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to just wake up one morning and win GTs and stuff, but if you just want to be more efficient at using it and learn how to kind of evolve your game plan, then come and join. There will be a link below, and I've still got the promo code INFILTRATE10 based off the Grundy Maneuver 2.0, and you can get 10% discount off. But obviously, guys, it's been a pleasure being able to bring Will's outstanding performance from Northampton Major, and Will, thank you so much. And for those of you listening, have a lovely day or evening whenever you're watching this, and we'll catch you all soon. Thanks very much.